Hi, in this tutorial we're going to learn how to create your first program in Java and everything about variables. So first off, I'm opening my IntelliJ Idea which we installed in the previous episode, and I will be creating a new project. Let's call the project Hello World. You don't have to change any settings over here. If you installed the JDK as instructed in the previous episode, it should be already set up as well. And another small detail before we create the project, we're going to uncheck add the sample code so we can just write it ourselves. So after you've picked your name and location, simply hit create. After you've created your project, we have to create our main class as Java operates in classes. So we can take a look over here on the left side of the screen. In the source folder, we're going to create a new Java class and we're going to call it main. You can remove everything inside of it. And now the biggest task of all, how to print out hello world to the console. Like with any other language, this is the first thing you should be worried about, which is actually how to make the simplest working program which just prints out a message to the console. To start, we're going to declare a public class called main, which should be the same name as your Java file, and to call it, we're going to simply type out public class main. Go ahead and open curly brackets, and inside of the main class, we're going to declare our main method by typing public static void main. Make sure that your class name is with a capital M and that your M in the method name is lowercase. Open brackets, and inside you're going to type out string square brackets args. You don't have to worry about what it means. For now, as much as you have to know is this is simply how you declare the main function in the class main. Go ahead and open another curly brackets. And now finally we can type our command, which is going to print our message. And you can do that by typing the following: system.out.println brackets, then quotation marks, hello world. And don't forget a semicolon at the end of the line. Now we can run our class, and as you can see, it printed out hello world to the console just as we expected. So that was how to create your first code in Java. Now we're going to head over to learn about variables. But before that, I'm going to quickly explain what these keywords mean and what do they actually do. The keyword public makes the method or a class public, meaning it can be accessed from outside. For example, our class main, when called public, can be accessed from an external class with a different name. And every public method inside of our public class can also be accessed from an external class. Static simply means that we are not creating an instance of the class main and we simply want to execute some code in our function. Void declares what we actually return from the function, which in this case is void, which means we're not returning anything. If I would have typed out, for example, int, then that class is expected to return an integer. First off, I'm going to cover all the basic variables in Java, which are also called primitives. And the first one of them is byte. To declare a variable, you have to first off declare the type of it, in this case byte. Then you have to declare the name of it, which I'm going to call letter, equals, then whatever you want inside of your variable. The second variable is actually a 2-byte variable called short. Short is a variable containing a number which cannot be bigger than 32,767. As you can see, it lets me type out this number into this short. However, if I increase it by 1, it's going to pop up an error because a number this large cannot be held inside of a short. Then we have the most popular variable, which contains a number which is an integer, and this one is a 4-byte number. So that means it can hold a lot more numbers than your simple short. As you can see, that's quite a larger number than the previous one, and it still doesn't show you an error. You can also declare a variable which can hold 8 bytes of numbers, which is called long, which can also hold large numbers. Next up is a float variable, which actually allows you to hold a value with higher precision than the previous ones. And by that I mean it can hold not full numbers. For example, 1.1234566. One important thing about floats though is that after the number itself, you actually have to type in an F to convert the number into a float. Otherwise, it's not going to work. After a float, we have a double. Double is basically the same as float. However, float is a 4-byte number and a double can hold an 8-byte number. Then we have a character or char, which is a 2-byte string. It can also only hold a single symbol. And the last main primitive of Java is actually a boolean. A boolean is a variable which can only hold 2 different values. The first one being true and the other one being false. Now that you know how to declare variables, we're going to take a look at how to edit them or change their values. Let's take, for example, our num2, which is an integer, and you can change its value by simply calling its name, then equals, and whatever you want to change it to. Let's say we're going to change it to 10. And the last variable I didn't mention yet is actually a string, and that is because we were covering primitives, and a string in Java is not a primitive, it's a real type or an object, which works very similarly to the primitives. However, there are some differences. To declare a string, we have to start with a capital S, and then we have to declare it inside of double quotation marks. You have to make sure it's those quotation marks and not the single ones, because otherwise you're not going to create a string. And as you can see, I have declared a string ping, which contains a string saying pong. On all of the variables and also strings, you can perform operations such as adding or subtracting and all the other ones. So let's say we want to take our num2, which is now set to 10 because we just changed it, and we want to add 5 to it. You can do it by typing out num2 equals num2 plus 5. However, there is a simpler and shorter option. As you can see over here, we're changing num2 to be whatever the num2 is plus 5, and Java has a shortcut for it, which simply goes as plus equals. This is the same thing as if you would type out all of this. It's just a simpler and shorter way to do it. So num2 plus equals 5 is going to increment our num2 by 5. Now let's say I want to merge two different strings. Let's create a second string for that purpose. And now that we have two strings, we're going to create a third one, which will be a combination of the previous two. String, let's call it combo, and it's going to be equal to ping plus pong. Let's now try and print our combo string to see if it worked. And as you can see, the strings we merged created now pong ping and were printed out into the console. You can change all of the variables we created previously here. For example, if I want to change my boolean called bool, I just have to call its name and then change its value to whatever I want it to be. Remember, booleans can only hold true or false. And that would be it for today's video. See ya.